Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome back. Today we are going to go over the cons of the Maserati Ghibli. So make sure you watch this whole video if you're considering buying one, because I'm going to go over some pain points that I've noticed having owned this car for about 8 months now. Just to be very clear too, I do love this car even with the cons being considered. But right off the bat, I'll tell you one of the biggest cons is the mileage. This car doesn't get great gas mileage at all. I typically get anywhere from 7 to 8 miles per gallon, and that's mostly because I drive the car in sport. The only time I've ever gotten over 20 miles per gallon was when I had the car in ICE, which is ICE mode, which stands for, I think, increased control and efficiency. Essentially what that is like a way to optimize everything so you get the best mileage. And the only time I ever put it on was when I had like no fuel left in the tank and I needed to absolutely stretch it. I think when I did that I had like 22 miles to the gallon, but on a typical drive it'll be anywhere from like 7 to 8, sometimes 9. But right here in like the gauge cluster, you can actually set it to a mode where it'll show you your miles per gallon as you're actively driving, and most of the time it'll sit between 2 and 5, and then sometimes go up to like 12, 14, drop back down. Not great mileage. This car takes maybe anywhere from, I don't know, depending on how low you are on gas, it takes like 18 gallons if you're like all the way at the bottom. Your normal fill up's like 16 gallons or so if you fill it up when you're at like a quarter. So assuming like 7 miles per gallon, you're gonna get around 150 miles or so on a full tank. And I want to say it's probably less than that, because I drive this car maybe 10 miles per day and I still fill it up every other week. So if you're driving more than that, expect to fill this car up a lot more often. And since you should use premium when filling up this car, it's not cheap either. I really don't think fuel prices should be a concern if you're buying a Maserati anyhow, but that's just something to note. Anyhow, another con is the front splitter of this car. You will scrape this thing all the time. If you're going up or down a driveway and it has any kind of slight incline, sometimes the incline's okay, but if the incline is just a little too steep, you're gonna scrape it every single time. There's even certain roads where if the hill you're driving down is too steep, at the very bottom, when the hill starts to flatten out, you can scrape the front of your car at the bottom of that road. There's one particular road over here that I had to stop driving down because at the bottom of the hill, I would scrape it every single time. And it was actually a very, very fast route to get back to my house that I used to use all the time, but I can't take that road in this car. And there's no axle lift, so you can't really do anything about it. The car just sits really, really low. You can't lift the front. It's gonna get scraped. In the next con, if you're in a state that requires you to, hold on, we're parallel parking. If you're in a state that requires you to have a front plate on your car, it kind of ruins the aesthetic of a Maserati. These cars weren't really designed to have a front plate on them. If you put a front plate on this, it ruins the aesthetic of the car, in my opinion. So, I mean, I'd prefer to just drive with no front plate and have to pay a fine if you ever get pulled over for that reason. In the 8 months I've had it, I've never been pulled over for that. This is a state that requires front plates, but there's a lot of people that don't have front plates here. I sincerely doubt you'll be pulled over specifically, well, here anyway, because you don't have a front plate. It would have to be for another reason, and then they might tack on, you don't have a front plate. It reminds me kind of like the Alfa Romeo, which even more so is not designed to have a front plate on it. It looks ridiculous with a front plate. The next con for sure, and I kind of talked about it in the pros video, is negative attention in regards to the car. So by that I mean people that want to race you all the time. You know, it's obviously dangerous. You get a lot of people driving like maniacs around you, trying to get you to race them. And I mean, if you're not into that, then I mean, expect it to happen anyway, because it will. And like even the positive attention, some people might find that to be a con because they don't want to talk to people. So if you have your windows down and you're driving the car, a lot of people will start conversations with you. If you have your windows down, it's like an open invitation to have people engage with you in conversation about your car. Next up, and this one is probably one of the worst, the AC in this car. And as far as I'm aware, I think it's just a Maserati issue, because I've read forums of people that own Maseratis. They all say the AC is bad. And in this car, no exception. It is horrible. It was like 75 degrees yesterday, and I couldn't even drive this car, because even with the AC on as high as it goes, the temperature as low as it goes, in the AC full blast, I get like no cold air. I sweat in this car. It gets so hot in here. The AC works good like right here, right? If I have my hands on the paddle shifters, my hands will feel the cold breeze coming out of the AC, but the ear will not get to me. So in like kind of by the time it gets to me, the ear is just humid. It's not cold at all. It's not as cold as it is when it hits my hands on the paddle shifter. By the time the ear gets to me, it's like lukewarm, and it's very, very uncomfortable. If it's like 90 degrees, this car is undrivable, because I will be covered in sweat by the time I get home. And that stinks too, because I like to take the car out and just drive around. So when it's really, really hot, it's just something I can't do. Apologies for this being a little dirty. I did not clean my car this week. I need to do that this weekend. But another complaint, and Doug mentioned this in his video too, the gear lever. It's a little unresponsive. Like, if I put this car in like drive, or this is manual, and then I go to shift it into park, sometimes it doesn't always go to park. Sometimes it'll go to reverse, and it won't make it all the way to park. It requires like an extra shift to get it to park. If I fidgeted around with this and did a couple more shifts, you'd probably be able to see that. Let's see if I can put it in drive. We'll try to bring it back. See, it goes into reverse. It requires like one more shift to put it into park. That's not really a massive complaint, because I mean, it's not a huge issue, but it can be a little unresponsive, but it is something to note. Another issue here, and Doug didn't even talk about this one in his video, but if you take a look at the material used around here, it's very cheap. Like when I went to clean the interior over here, this is all peeled. Like, take a look at that. Right? This is just like a very cheap material, and I wish it wasn't. Because once this is peeled, I'm not gonna replace that. By the way, it's a completely different day. I filmed this video over a couple days. The next con though, and this kind of goes with what I did talk about earlier, where you're gonna scrape the splitter. Speed bumps. So speed bumps of a certain height, and you will scrape the undercarriage of this car all the time if the speed bump is just a little too high. I'm actually gonna go and show you what I'm talking about. There is a speed bump in particular that has the height that I'm thinking of. And the few times that I've driven my car around there, every time I've went over those speed bumps, I've scraped the bottom of the car every single time on every single speed bump they have over there. No matter how fast I'm going, it doesn't matter if I'm like crawling up to it, I'll scrape the bottom of the car every time. These things right here. Scrape the car every single time. But yeah, though, I mean, you just have to be super careful with this car. And a lot of those things, like the steep driveways, the speed bumps, and inclines and things like that, a lot of that just has to do with the fact that the car just sits really low. And there's no way to lift it. So let's talk about my final complaint with this car. And this one, honestly, it's not going to be a big issue for a lot of people. The car, like I've said in the pros video, it handles beautifully. My only issue with handling on this car is when we're talking racing speeds. Like, we're talking 100 plus miles per hour. I think the fastest I've taken this car was about 130 miles per hour or a little over. And when I got to those speeds, I felt like this car, I no longer felt super confident in this car. Right? I didn't feel like it handled that particularly well. And if you're going those speeds or anywhere near the 100 miles per hour and you have to take a corner, I have no confidence really in the car. I feel like it does not want to do it. And I don't know if it's just me being anxious about it or what, but that's just my personal experience taking the car to that speed. Again, that's probably not going to be a big issue for a lot of people. I don't think many people are buying this car to race it, or at least, I mean, I would hope you're not buying this car to race it. If you were buying a car and you wanted performance, you could easily get a better car. But anyhow, that's really all my complaints with this car so far. In the 8 months that I've had this car, those are really all the issues I've had. Those are really all my main pain points with this vehicle. Some of them I can't even really call pain points. They're more like minor inconveniences. Anyhow, though, if you watched this video to the end, let me know what you thought about it. If you like the content that I'm putting out, leave a thumbs up. It helps me a lot, especially as a newer channel. And it would mean a lot if you subscribe to the channel as well. And let me know what you want to see. What videos do you want to see, right? I'd love to take suggestions and make content that my viewers want to see. Anyhow, thanks for watching the video, and I'll see you in the next one.